Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dead Robot Society. I'm not going to give you an episode number today because this is a special episode. An unfortunately sad episode, I'm afraid, because many of you may not have already heard the news. It was on Facebook, and we haven't mentioned it elsewhere, but we've been gone for the last couple of weeks because our Dark Overlord, Justin Macumber, lost his fight with having liver disease, and he passed away a few weeks ago. So this episode is a tribute to him. Besides Paul, joining me today are Eliyanna Kaiser and Scott Roche, former co-hosts on this show. And we're going to be talking about Justin and the impact that he's had on our lives and the impact that we envision he's going to continue to have on our lives, not only because of creating the Dead Robot Society, but for all the things that he's done and the example that he's provided for us. Eliyanna, Scott, welcome. I wish that this was a happier occasion, but welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
A lot of our listeners may be newer than you folks, and I'd like to take a moment to go ahead and have you tell us about yourselves so that they'll be brought up to speed about who you are. Eliyanna, why don't you go first?
Okay. I was introduced to the Dead Robot Society when I was working on trying to break into short story writing, and I had like 3 novel projects going on, which are still not done. And I was listening to the show a lot, and I'm one of those people who would write a lot of emails to Justin and Terry and Ryan and whoever else was on back then. And after a while, I got to know these guys a little bit. And at some point, Justin decided that he really wanted a vagina on the show, basically. And so he called me and said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "I'm nobody. Like, I'm not a real writer. I'm a total amateur. I think I'd had like 1 short story sale at that point." And I still haven't had that many short story sales. And he was like, it's fine. Like, we're a podcast for people that are, working on our craft, and you have smart things to say. And he made me feel very, very good about myself. And I said, sure, why not? And so I joined, and I had a lot of fun being on the show and got to know these guys really well, and become part of the Dead Robots family. And then I got pregnant in 2012 with twins, and they may make noise during this episode, and I apologize. They're 5 now. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to handle being mom of 2 baby boys and keep a job, forget a podcast schedule. My writing took a deep dive hit. And it took me a little while to crawl back from that. And mostly what I'm doing these days in terms of my writing is working on picture books, because I have like itty bitty bits of time, and that's the right amount of time, the picture book length. And I do a book review blog from the perspective of a parent of kids with autism, which my kids both have, which is lineupthebooks.com. And I have a lot of fun talking about picture books. So we used to talk a lot about, grown-up books on this show and the craft of that. And now I spend a lot of time thinking about the craft of books for little guys. And it's a lot of fun too. But over the years, I was really happy to count Justin as a friend, even after I left the show. He continues to be very inspirational to me. I'm really glad to be back to be able to celebrate that.
Excellent. Scott, I'm sure everyone remembers who you are, but reintroduce yourself anyway.
Well,
that wasn't meant in a good way. I'm slamming you in case that didn't come together.
No, I totally picked up on what you were putting down there, which was me. I'm Scott Roche. People didn't know me when I was on the show. And actually, it's funny, when I very first started listening to DRS years ago, if you had told me at that point that I was going to be a host on the show, I would have laughed in your face, because that would have been just a ludicrous idea to me. I was barely a writer when I first started listening. And I started writing largely as a result of shows like The Dead Robots and podcast fiction from people like Paul and Sigler and the other people whose names are echoing through the halls of podcast history. So because I was like, surely I can do better than that. As it turns out, I can't. But then I was asked to, of all things, fill Justin's seat when he went on hiatus. And again, if you had told me that was going to be how it would go down, I would have found that absolutely ludicrous, because Justin was indispensable to the show, or at least I thought so. But he knew what was best, and I just had an amazing time being a co-host and talking about the craft with Paul and Terry and the guests that we had on. And it really did make me not just a better writer, but a better editor, a better publisher. And I am really grateful for the impact that Justin had on my life, both directly and through the show. It's amazing to think, while he didn't publish that many books, they were all really good, but I think his biggest impact in the universe is going to be this show and all of the great writing that now exists because this show happened. We never know what kind of impact we're going to have on other people, I think, until it's far too late. And I just I want to tell writers and podcasters who are listening to this, or want to be writers and want to be podcasters, you can have an amazing impact on people through this medium, and Justin did for sure.
It's hard to believe he passed away. I think it was 3 weeks ago now. I want to say 2 or 3 weeks, but I still can't. I don't have the direct date in my head, because it's just still seems unreal to me. It seems like I'll be on Facebook and I should expect to see something from him. I still can't really believe that he's gone. And I've been thinking about it since he passed, and the impact that he has had on me is something that I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to quantify. I've been on the show. The show's been here for it had its 10-year anniversary the end of last year. And I've been here all except one of those years. So it seems like I've known him forever. And it's been about a decade. And I am going to miss him so terribly. Not just as somebody that showed and led the way in how much one could do to develop themselves as a writer or a podcaster, but as a friend. It's still mind-boggling. I'm still very chaotic in my thoughts of trying to figure out even what to say about it, because it doesn't seem real. Paul, what do you think?
It's been a rough couple weeks. I found out about this show because of an interview that Sigler did on it way back. Had to be maybe season 3 of DRS, if you can say we ever had seasons, year 3. And so basically started keeping an eye on it, started listening to it, and then Ryan asked me to come on the show and talk about I think it was Canvas. I don't remember if it was Canvas or Mama, one of the short stories, one of the Fiend's short stories I was writing. And I had a really good time talking with all three of you. And then y'all kept kind of inviting me back to talk about other things. I met Terry at a con, and when Ryan decided he was going to move on from the show, Terry asked me if I was interested in being a co-host. And I pretty much jumped at the chance because I knew from years of listening to Justin and Terry, all the times they disagreed, all the writing advice that they had, all the exploration, all those things were, very important to talk about. And one of the problems with writing is quite often you just don't get a chance to talk shop. And quite often we writers tend to be introverts. It's tough to get us out of our shells. We may not make friends easily. Or maybe just because of age, we're spread out all over the place with our friends. And this show, every week, it was a competition between the three of us to see who could write the most words. It was discussions about plot issues that had come up, and then basically, if one of us had an issue, we would talk about it on the show, and we would argue all the sides of it. We would brainstorm a little bit. Maybe we would give examples from movies, hell, even sometimes even songs, for crying out loud. But the bottom line was, every week it was us talking about writing and talking about ourselves. And I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the fact that we were giving some good advice to people, and at the same time we were giving ourselves that advice. And I think that was one of the most important parts of the show. And what Justin provided is he provided that mechanism where this show has always been a discussion show. It's been a talk show. It's been all those things about writing, from publishing to writing a grammatically correct sentence. We covered everything from every side of it. And to my knowledge, we're the only show that does that. And Justin set that up. And Justin got a good group of people together, a good format, and he touched so many people because of what he created. And I am so goddamn proud to be part of that and to carry on the legacy. But I'm with Terry. I expect to see a snarky comment. I expect to see some Star Wars fanboy love, and then get him all pissed off about trolling him about it. Or the other nonsensical things he loved, like 80s hair band music. My God, the man had no taste. And his extreme pinchment in the middle of the show, especially once we started using video to see one another while we talked, the son of a bitch would always lift up his shirt and do a titty twist. Give us the nip shot. So Terry and I would just be horrified, and quite often we were unable to talk because we were either laughing so hard or pretending we were puking. Either way, it made Justin smile and laugh, and it was always good to break the ice. And whenever, Justin never allowed there to be dead air. He would find a way to fill it with some nonsense and break us out of things, and that's what made him a really great host of the show, and what made him gave his, this is part of his personality. And he never made me feel that I had a bad opinion. We disagreed about a lot of things, which is the way it should be. We would talk about those things. Terry is usually the curmudgeon who disagrees with everybody.
I disagree with that.
There we go. But seeing that interplay between Justin and the other hosts and our guests, and the fact that he could be poignant, he could be terse, and it could also be revelatory all at the same time. And it was when he was really on his game, it was such a joy to be involved with it, to participate in it, and just to watch and listen.
One of the things
I think those are the things that are gonna stick with me forever.
One of the things I always appreciated, and Paul, you kind of touched on it, about this show and about Justin in particular, was how real it always was. I dabbled in a lot of how to write podcasts before sort of landing on Dead Robots. And one of the things that I appreciated about it as a new writer was how real everybody was about the struggles that they had with their process, the struggles that they had with their personal lives. And in spite of all of those issues, the writing still got done. I was inspired as a writer who I struggle with mental health. I struggle with physical health. I struggle with having a family and children. And I don't struggle with that, but that is a time issue, if you know what I mean.
It's a struggle in balancing it.
Right. And the fact that you guys always did and continue to do, to talk about those things, talk about how you balance your job when you have a day job, with becoming a writer and finding time to write and your family life and all of that stuff, that really inspired me and continues to inspire me. And with Justin, there was no pretense. There was no, you got who he was. Like, if you heard him say stuff on the show, it was because he really believed it. It was because that's who he was as a person. There was no false front. And I really appreciated that about him as a person. And also, as I appreciated how that became and remains the focus of the show. We are writers. Here's how we can improve our writing, but here's also how we can overcome the obstacles that get between the writing and us. And also, it gives people a lot of hope. So he gave people a lot of hope in terms of becoming a writer. When I first started listening to this show, I say becoming a writer, becoming a published writer, becoming a successful writer. Watching this show, listening to this show, I got to see the arc of careers unfurl in front of me. And I got to follow these people who had successes and failures and kept on trying when they had failures. And that was amazing too, and continues to be another reason why I listen to this show on a regular basis, is because I get to experience, that sense of, this is what I can do if I put the work in.
One of the things that I think Justin brought to the show was basically the exuberance of a 12-year-old. Everything excited him.
Yes.
Everything got an emotional response with just as much enthusiasm as one would expect of a 12-year-old. Unfortunately, his humor was that of a 12-year-old boy as well. But, that's what you get. And Eliyanna, thank you for prompting me. He passed away on January 15th. I know exactly what we were doing when we heard the news, because Paul and I were recording the intro to a show when we got the news. So that was a weirdly crazy time frame.
That sucked. That's why we didn't do a new episode that day. Yeah, it's always bad. And of course, the social media, age of social media, other people find out stuff before you do. And that was kind of one of those deals where we didn't get an official notification. Somebody wrote me and said, "I'm sorry." I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Right.
And then I immediately knew. So it was a really big shock to all of us, the way it happened. I'm sorry, I got us off topic.
See how you are.
Well, that's nothing new.
No, that's nothing new. That's another thing about this show. What's the topic?
It's on topic. What you were saying about mental health, Scott, I think one of the things that at first I didn't know what to do with, and then I really appreciated about Justin was just how open he was with his own mental health issues. I mean, a lot of people struggle with mental health issues, but creatives, we have maybe a few more than, the rest of the population. And that piece of himself that he was always so willing to share, maybe overshare a little sometimes, but share. I think that was really meaningful to a lot of people. And I think when someone is willing to put themselves out like that, it really does go a long way in like the culture of the community and destigmatizing those problems. I spent a lot of time worrying about the guy, right? Like he would say something on Facebook and I was like, oh, he's having a bad day. This is not a good Justin day. And like, I'd message Krista and be like, check on Justin. He just said some weird shit, right? And she would, and then Justin would let me know that Krista told him that I messaged her, and I was like, yeah, well, that's going to keep happening. I'm going to rat you out. Duh, right? Like, but while it was complicated, if you cared about him, to watch him live on Facebook or wherever, be so open about how much he was hurting sometimes, it was also this way in which he was really connecting with everyone and being such a full and complete part of this community that was unashamed and was really just open about the entirety of who he was, and it was really special. It was a really special part of how he lived his life that I admired greatly about him, and made him a better writer.
It did. I mean, there was that human connection, and it's funny. I am a big fan. I have become a big fan of the Facebook on this day thing that shows you, what happened on this date in the years past. And today, I was scrolling through it, and I happened across Justin asking me if I was okay, because apparently on that particular day I had been stirring up some shit. And it was especially poignant because we were doing this show today, but it was also like, okay, that was who Justin was. He was both someone who was, as I often have been, a bit of a drama queen at times, but he also really cared deeply about his friends and family. That was who he was as much as anything else, and it made him a better writer. I always tell people, if you want to be a good writer, you have to be, you don't have to be able to, but it helps to be able to deeply connect with human beings, because that's what you're going to be doing through your writing. And if you can connect with real people through your humanity, and you can put that on the page, then that's going to make you a better writer all the way around.
What Justin had is he had a disease called non-alcoholic stenohepatitis, and I'm probably mispronouncing it. And that's his struggle that he had with that. Always had, as soon as I heard about it, had a very deep meaning for me as well, because I also have that disease. My liver is at stage 4 cirrhosis as well, just like his was, only mine hasn't stopped functioning. I'm hoping to continue to lose weight and stave that day off for decades. But seeing the struggles that he went through with this impacted me personally in a very strong way. And a lot of people didn't see the struggles that he was going through behind the scenes. I won't say that a lot of people didn't, but his depression had to be very bad over the last several months, because I know that he was convinced that the disease was going to take him. And when I'd heard that he had gotten a liver transplant, I was overjoyed for him. And then his liver attacked his immune system, and it ended up taking him. Health is a really important thing for writers. We don't think about our bodies, we don't think about our minds, but we should. We should be thinking about what we can do to make ourselves better. And if we see somebody else that's suffering, we should reach out to them. And Justin did that when he saw somebody that was hurting, that needed, I don't know, intervention may be too strong of a word, but when he felt like he needed to say something, he would say something. And I think that's something we can all learn from.
I don't think Justin ever really met a stranger, and he was a very caring, empathetic guy, and cared a lot for his friends. He was always a good cheerleader when you needed one. He was always excited to read a beta copy and tear you up inside and out, had new ideas. And when we found out he was going to have a liver transplant, I remember Terry and I were recording that day, and we were both just, we're both expressing a sigh of relief, because we had dreaded doing this very show, that it might be inevitable. And that's always a shitty thing, to be in that position. But we were kind of prepared for it, but it's still a huge kick in the ghoulies when, one of your friends just leaves so suddenly, especially when we thought we were across the finish line. He got a new liver. We thought, oh, okay, he's going to be good. A couple of months of recovery, and the old Justin will be back. So I think the the suddenness of everything was good and bad in a lot of ways. It just kind of caught us completely unawares. But I've been thinking a lot about Justin the last 2 weeks, and it's still very, very difficult to define, all the things that I'm thankful for that, he kind of gave us. But I struggle with bipolar and depression, and Justin and I were kind of buddies on our various degrees of insanity. So yeah, he was always willing to be there to lend a hand, I think, even when he was in the darkness. So it's just another one of those things, another facets of his personality that was so awesome. And even just gonna miss him.
If you had to look back over the entire time that you've either been a part of the show or even just listened to it, what one thing in a show that Justin did stands out to you? Good, bad, indifferent, funny, whatever it is.
I have a favorite show. I loved the show where he brainstormed Stillwater.
Oh yeah.
I was on then. I haven't listened to all of the episodes of the entirety of DRS, especially in the first year after my kids were born, where I was in like some kind of weird haze. But that I loved shows where he was brainstorming. It's coming up with new things is always the most fun. But it was, for a writer to listen to another person's brainstorming process, it's the sort of window into how their mind works and a window into their creative process and into, what makes them tick. And I'm a horror buff. And he and I had that in common, and we loved a lot of the same books. And I could see the small town, Stephen King kind of inspired thing, like, creeping out of his mind, but at the same time wanting to do the monster. I don't know if Cabin in the Woods come out yet. I now kind of bring those things together in my head too. He had all these different inspirations that I know were just sort of bubbling, and it was so cool to see how he was developing it. And I remember just being so excited listening to him talk on that episode and having a lot of fun bouncing ideas with him, and just getting to experience that creative joy with him, and watch him really start to develop that idea. It's very memorable for me. And I think it's my favorite of his books. Yeah.
I know that for me, it's not a specific thing, a specific moment in time, but it's when he got really excited about something, when he just got on a tear and just started running and just basically ran over you if you disagreed with him about something. Those are the moments that I remember about him, his passion. And it was always fun watching him just wholeheartedly embrace whatever the cause of the moment was that he was fighting about, and just wave that banner around and hit you over the head with the staff if you didn't agree with him. That was always fun for me.
Oh, come on. He was never opinionated.
What?
He was never opinionated. Here's the part where Paul adds clips of him being opinionated.
But even though he was super opinionated, he also was very, very self-critical and very good at checking himself and reevaluating ideas he had. Some of it was a little self-hating. He was like, "Oh God, I'm sexist," right? He'd come back to "I'm sexist" all the time, and he was very concerned about that, and very concerned about not not being good enough ethically, in terms of the way that he was viewing things. And he was such a good person. I mean, the fact that he was so worried about those things all the time was just a sign of how good a person he was, that he was grappling, that he continued to fight those internal battles that we all fight. Yeah, I mean, he was opinionated and he was, stubborn, but he also had the ability to be reflective in when it really counted. And I thought that was a pretty neat thing about him.
Totally agreed.
Yeah.
One of the and this is evocative of how Justin was. One of the things that one of the episodes that stands out most for me was when I came on the show to talk about my first novel, Jenny Dare, Crimson Sands, and to promote that. And what was so amazing and resonant to me about that was, I mean, who cares about another self-published science fiction book, from somebody who nobody should know anything about? Like, it was Justin and Eliyanna. I think you were on that show too. And it's like, for me as a new author, it made me feel important. It made me feel like I had something to contribute to the conversation. And that was something that I really appreciated about Justin, was he didn't care if it was your first book or your 50th book, or, that was not an indicator for him of how important you were. You were equally important if you had something to add to the conversation. And how encouraging he constantly was. And then once I was a regular guest on the show and became a co-host, never stopped kicking my butt, never stopped expecting me to deliver my A game and to keep writing and keep going. And just that level of encouragement he had for new writers and for existing writers and for his friends and for strangers. That episode where I came on was one of my first steps towards becoming a writer, because somebody cared, somebody gave me an opportunity, and I'll always be thankful to him and to the show for pushing me to constantly improve. And I think that's the message that this whole podcast and his whole life sent was, get off your butt and do this. I mean, don't sit there and pity yourself, and don't sit there and think you're nothing and you've got nothing to add. You matter as a human being, and you need to get your fingers on the keys and your butt in the seat and do the work and put stuff out there and keep putting stuff out there. And the fact that you, Paul, and you, Terry, continue to project that ethic into the community is a testimony to what Justin set in motion.
I need to hear him kicking my butt again, because this has not been a great couple of months for my production anyway.
Yeah, I need to get on that. I need to start kicking your ass more on a daily basis.
I think you do.
That's what needs to happen.
That is one of the best things I think about Justin, is that he did believe that everyone had something to contribute to this, whether they were somebody that was hoping to write something, somebody that was trying to write something, somebody that had written 15 books, somebody that had written 50 books. Everybody, no matter what their current level of skill was, he always thought they could do better. And sometimes he would kick it. Sometimes he would encourage it, but he would always strive to do what he could to contribute to helping that person be just a little bit better. And that's a wonderful thing.
I remember when we were working on the anthology, the Explorers anthology, that was a real problem because we had this, I don't know if Terry, you remember, but we had this like Google spreadsheet, and we had all of the submissions that we got listed. And then we were supposed to, I don't know if it was like thumbs up, thumbs down, like exactly how we did it, but like in some way say like which ones we liked. And then we had like notes we could write back and forth to each other. And Justin thought everything had promise, that, we could work with every single one of these authors and every single one of these stories. Hi, Hugo. You want to say hi to people?
Hi.
Hi,
Hugo.
Hi. But he really thought that all of these stories had potential. And it was like, Justin, first of all, a lot of these stories suck. Like, also, right? Like, we are not going to work with these people for like 8 or 9 months on like 20 like, no, we're going to pick the best stories that are the closest to publication. That's what we're editors. This is not like he was just like, but I really feel like we could work with this person.
I'm going
and
to talk first.
You're going to talk?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the first of Nicole.
Yeah, that's Terry, and that's Scott, and that's Paul. You say hi.
Hi.
I told you this was going to happen. I'm going to mute myself. Other people can talk now.
Yeah, it's gonna be that kind of day.
I could totally see her running a busy mom's podcast right now. I could totally see that.
Oh, Eliyanna, get started on that right now. You have no idea how many people would actually, subscribe to that and share stories. It would be awesome.
The double-edged sword of being able to have the time to do a podcast about being busy and the need for a podcast about being busy. To piggyback off of what she started to say and was saying about that anthology, that's both the blessing and the curse of being a Star Wars fan. You want to love everything, and not admit that there's faults and flaws so serious that you just need to give up on this particular movie.
Oh, I have Star Wars props. Hold on. So when my children were born, Krista knitted blankets. Love them. And Justin sent these guys.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Which one of them's Darth and which one of them's Yoda?
Hugo, do you like Darth or Yoda? Yoda. He likes Yoda. That actually makes sense. Anyway, I wanted to show some of my props. He also sent me this T-shirt. And it was funny because I had just given birth to twins. And it's like a regular women's T-shirt. I was like, my body does not fit into that at all. But it's a supernatural thing, and we're both fans. I'm wearing all my totems right now. I'm wearing my Justin T-shirt. We've got my dolls. Oh, and he sent me. I brought this also. This. He thought that I was going to have a lot of time to color in a supernatural coloring book. So he got me this when the kids were born too. And as you can see, it is in pristine condition. I have not done anything with it, but I thought that was sweet of him. And those who know him well know that he enjoys coloring books. He enjoyed coloring books.
He was just a big kid.
Yes,
he was.
He really was. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
he was.
In a way, he had, even in his dark moments, he had optimism. He wanted to believe that the very best would happen. He wanted to believe that everything would turn out well. It breaks my heart that he's gone.
I think I was thinking about this just recently, actually, while we guys were talking. Here's an example of what I kind of owe him, and Terry for that matter. I was in discussions with Sever Press about a book, and they wanted me to write a specific kind of book. So I kind of panicked. I got on Facebook Messenger with Terry and Justin, and in 15 minutes, I had the conceit for the Black. And that book, so different from all the other books that I had written at that point, is what really launched my career. And Justin, even up to the last second before it was published, was giving me more and crazier ideas that if I'd had time to put some of those in, I have an autonomous underwater vehicle in there that in that book that's always got trouble, always got problems. He wanted me to put a sticker on there with this googly-eyed smiley face, duh looking face with the words "I'm special" next to it. He wanted that on the AUV. And because it would have been hilarious. There's no doubt it would have been funny. And I could actually see these two characters putting that on there. But I hadn't ever considered it that anybody would do that. He came up with that and was immediate like you need to add this. You need to add this. And in some ways, I wish I had. I thought about it. If I go back and write the omnibus version of the Black when I'm editing, I might add that in there for him. But that was the kind of guy he was. Is he would see those kinds of things to make a reader smile, and it was also the way he wrote. Is he was just basically putting in the stuff that was there that made it all work. And I'll along with Eliyanna, I also am a big horror fan. And Justin and I just kind of, really, really played off one another while Terry Center had no idea what we were talking about. And those conversations were fun, but that brainstorming session, pretty much just, it did it. It just did it. And I had never brainstormed with Terry and Justin before, and we did this all over Facebook Messenger. But those two guys interplay so much together that they were able to do that. And Justin's love of brainstorming also gave birth to 2 other podcasts. He liked to say that this show came from Murr Lafferty's I Should Be Writing. But when you start looking at all the shows that have come off of this one, including shows started by our listeners, to do and discuss other things. I mean, he's basically at the top of this list that just kind of spreads out. And a lot of us have to be thankful for that, he gave a lot of people who otherwise would not have been podcasting the confidence to start podcasting and to start discussing these issues because they were fans. Some of them are readers, some of them are podcast listeners, some of them are writers. But the bottom line is they started all those podcasts because of what Justin created. And I think that's a legacy that, you hope that when you wind up your career, that people are going to be kind of saying the same thing about you. I do want to share one particular moment that happened almost every week, especially during the pre-show.
It's been a while.
Because somebody would say something that had to do with been a while. And that son of a bitch would start singing the Stain song every freaking time. It never stopped. If you go back and listen to the early episodes where I was on, he did it on purpose every single freaking episode because I called him on it. And he enjoyed doing that. He enjoyed just needling, finding those places where he could get a response from me because he thought it was funny and it made for a good show. Us bickering like little kids, that was just kind of part of the show that he created and how it passed down. And it makes it fun for us because, we sometimes we recycle topics. We always have something new to say, which usually goes back and, disagrees with what we originally said.
We have changed our minds on many things.
On many things, yes. But Justin wanted to keep it fun for us because and for himself, because it was otherwise it's the same show. It's the same 15 episodes over and over again. And we never wanted that. He never wanted that.
No.
Every week we try and find something new to talk about. And that was part of what Justin just kind of taught us how to do, I guess.
One of the things that I think that most of the early listeners wouldn't realize is now we're doing it so the patrons can hear the pre-show. When Justin was with us, we would never have dared even think about letting anyone hear the pre-show.
No. Not even some of the bumpers that I pulled out when I started doing the editing, I was like, I don't know if I should put this in here, but I'm gonna.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, it was like even when I was on the show, it even became kind of a running gag of, you guys won't believe what we just said, and you won't believe it because we're not going to tell you because it's completely filthy. But it was, again, I think it goes back, and I'm glad you guys are allowing some people to hear that and see that, because again, this is a show about writers. We are real people. We are your next door neighbor. We are your office mate. We are, I started a new job last month and found out that one of my coworkers is a huge audio drama nerd and a huge podcasting and voice acting nerd. And And that was the thing, I often say to my kids and to anybody that will listen, if somebody had told me years ago when I was a kid or even a young adult that a regular person could be a writer, but being a writer wasn't just some, you didn't get a crown put on you at some point and saying, you're a writer. No, I mean, these writers are real people, and we have problems and we have things that we're really good at. And just the fact that, how down to earth this show was and is, helps some people, I think, understand that, who may think that, their writing heroes are somehow up on this pedestal. That's the thing about Justin and about you guys. There is no pedestal. I mean, you get we are who you see. There's no pretense. One of the things that, and Terry, you touched on this, the whole Justin being taken from us too soon, and I can't help but think of P.G. Holyfield, who was also taken from us too soon. You hear this when people pass away that are too young. If you're listening to this right now and you're like, gosh, I've always wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to write a novel. Don't wait. Go write the damn thing. Write it now. I wish that Justin had time to put more novels out, because I loved Stillwater. I loved Haywire. I loved what he did. He wrote a story for me for my my Bushido Western mashup, and it was amazing. And I would have loved to have seen another story from him in that universe. So, none of us know how much time we've got left. And there is no reason for you to put off that writing project that you've always wanted to do. And I always like to take opportunities like this to say, do that thing that you've always meant to do, because if you wait until tomorrow or next week, it may never see the light of day. And that's a sad thing for the universe, to see one less creative person in the mix. So
I know the last book that I knew he was writing, because we talked about it, was going to be he wanted to basically mash up Hellraiser into deep space science fiction, something like Event Horizon, but something just more Justin.
I would have read the hell out of that book.
I would have read the hell out of that book too. I'm very pissed off that I'll never get to know, what was in his mind, because when we talked about it over Facebook Messenger, he was so excited about it, and he was doing what horror writers love to do, which is, what evil thing can I do now to just add more mayhem to the mix? What can I do to have another homage to Event
Picture
Horizon?
Terry and make Terry cry. Basically.
Yeah, what can we do to ensure Terry will never read this book?
Yeah.
How can I make Terry wet his pants just a little?
So I mean, I just and that was the kind, and again, that was the kind of guy he was. He took what he loved and he remade it, and he made it in his way, and he did it the way he wanted to. He wrote YA fiction, he wrote adult horror fiction, science fiction. I mean, he was kind of all over the place, and there aren't all that many writers that are okay enough to do that, to cross those lines, and he was one of those folks who just didn't care about the lines.
Yeah, he was non-monogamous when it came to genre. He was like, he had stories and he had characters.
Right.
Well,
and
that's
I
the
think
thing.
yeah.
That's the fact that and Eliyanna, you're a King fan. I'm a King fan. Justin was a King fan.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, I really don't care. That's the thing about King and the people that he inspired, is they loved to play in these other genres and make stories, and just tell stories. Justin was a storyteller as much as he was a writer. He was, and that's the other thing. I mean, no fear. He would get an idea and be like, let's there was no, it's kind of like in that rule in improv where you don't say no to an idea. So he would never, I don't think he ever met an idea that he would say no to.
I took this trip to Bangor, Maine, last spring, and which is, for King fans, the town that Derry, Maine, which is
It's Mecca.
It's Mecca, and that's why I went there, of course. And pretty much the entire time I was there, I was on Messenger with Justin. It was almost like I took the vacation with him, which was really great. And that's sort of the last, I mean, I talked to him after that. We exchanged all kinds of communications, but I was talking to him like pretty consistently for like the three and a half days I was there. And he was like, "Where are you now?" I'm like, "I'm in the cemetery." He was so excited, and I was so excited. "Where are you now?" "I'm at the storm drain," and I was like posting pictures on Facebook, and he was, I mean, it was fun. It was really fun. I mean, he could get so excited about things. He was so eager to share in joy, and he was so eager to be a fan. Like, he loved being a fan. He loved the community that came with being a fan. Hi, Hugo. And I loved how unapologetic he was about that. It was wonderful.
Yeah, he was a fanboy. He was the kind of fanboy you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
One final thing that I think we should talk about, and we've touched on it going through the episode, but I want to go ahead and hit it explicitly, is that he may have left us, but his legacy remains. And it's only going to continue to grow. He created this podcast 10 years ago so that he could share his enthusiasm and love of writing and teaching others and learning at the same time. And that hasn't stopped, and it's not going to stop. It's my hope that 10, 15, 20 years down the road, if and when my time comes, then it will continue to go, even if the hosts change all over again. And that's going to be Justin's legacy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And if you go to the Facebook group, you'll see that legacy just all over the place, because of all the people who, we have some people on there who just want to hang out with writers. We have new writers, experienced writers. We have skill levels all over the place. And that's another wonderful thing about what, he left behind, is the fact that we are bringing new folks into the fold all the time. We're working on their first books. And I'm so excited that that's happening, and that be a part of that. And, thank you, Justin, for allowing me to play on your playground, because it's been a blast.
Well, and I think, another bit of his legacy that I hope to see happen is, for as brief a time as he was with us, and for as few books as there are and stories that are out there in the wild for people to appreciate, if you read and enjoyed one of his books, steal some of his stuff. Okay, I'm sorry, excuse me. Pay homage to some of his stuff. I mean, I want to see people make references and plant Easter eggs in there. I mean, that's what I do. Even now, as an experienced writer, if you read enough of my stuff, you can tell I'm a Stephen King fan. You can tell I'm a Ray Bradbury fan. I want to see books that from people where I can tell they were a Justin Macumber fan. There are so many great ideas that he had that could be played with and expanded upon. There are, his legacy is not just in this podcast, but also in the books and stories that he wrote and told. Carry that stuff forward, and that's the thing. It's he put so much out into the world, that if I imagined that I had that I would have a tenth of the legacy that he has, I'd be happy, because there's just so much out there now as a result of his life on Earth. That I think that, not to be too cliched, but I think the world is a better place for the 45 years that we had him.
I'll look at that.
Everyone, if you have any final words, I think we're going to go ahead and draw this to a close. And I'll just go ahead and throw the floor open to you.
Wow. I feel like Justin is always going to be sitting in the third chair, even though there isn't one presently. And even if we eventually add another co-host back to the show, I think he's always going to be at Terry and I's elbow. And I don't think there's an episode that we record that I don't think about him. That while I'm editing an episode, I don't think Justin would have loved to have been there for that conversation. And I'm sure that's going to be both a blessing and a curse for me personally, because I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss my buddy. And I'm just so glad that I was able to be a part of his life and a part of his legacy for as short a time as I knew him.
Scott, Eliyanna, any final thoughts?
I just don't want it to be final thoughts.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's poor phrasing.
Really,
Poor phrasing.
really
Final
hard.
thoughts for this episode.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I just respect so much about Justin, and always respect about him, as someone who inspires others, is that he was so willing to put himself out there, whether that meant his struggles personally, or his strong thoughts on things, or his writing. He didn't sit around, hand wringing like, oh, is it good enough to see the light of day? Just he put it out there. And I've never been as good at that as he is, but he inspires me to put more out there and to be less afraid to use the time I have. And I'm very I'm going to stop before I start crying. I'm very glad to have known him.
I think that other than saying "menomina," I just, the thing that I love about Justin, about this podcast, and about remembering Justin is remembering all the laughs. All of his stories, all of his podcast episodes. Just remembering how much laughter he brought me as a person, how much laughter he experienced. He had a lot of joy for all of the struggles and pain that he might have had. And that's what I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember the joy and the creative energy and the amazing talent that he brought to his little slice of the internet, and to all of his fans and readers and friends. And yeah, I think that's it for me. In memory of Justin,
of course.
Justin.
And on that note,
On that note, I think it's time to go ahead and bring this episode to a close. Thank you both for coming on and sharing your memories of Justin. We really deeply appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
It was an honor being considered.
Folks, if you have some commentary for us, you can send us your memories of Justin at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find Paul on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. Better yet, go to the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society group on Facebook and leave us your thoughts there. We have to mention the good folks at podhoster.com who host the episodes, the audio episodes for your pleasure. You can also find us on YouTube/DRS podcast, where the video content is done. And of course, we also have Patreon at patreon.com/DRS podcast, though I don't think that we're going to go ahead and mention our patrons at this particular time, not for this episode. So, folks, thank you for listening to us. Keep Justin in your thoughts. Go listen. Go read his books. Go enjoy him. Go listen to old episodes. Just take a moment to remember him. And thank you for coming by. We'll resume our normal weekly episodes next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.